negative implications for not visiting with your instructor during a semester at least once?
Well, practically speaking, students can get through fine without visiting the instructor. So, fair enough. As a general rule, those students tend to be a little bit more nervous because they haven't checked to see whether what they understand fits what I'm looking for. And it's not that I'm looking for certain things and a different instructor is looking for different things. There are very standard outcomes we need to deliver. We have learning outcomes for each class, for each course, that we have to demonstrate students have mastered before they can move on. So we're all playing to the same basic line. The rules are the same. But you may not know what those rules are. And so sitting down with the instructor to make sure that the really big pieces that you need to understand, you actually do understand, gives everybody some peace of mind. Well, it doesn't give me any peace of mind. I'm going to evaluate the test and you're going to pass or you're not. But the students have a much easier ride. Second of all, the tension that students will experience is that, at least in the business program, we are doing things quite differently than in other disciplines, and there is often a tension with students saying, is this what they expect? What does this mean? And within Canadian students, if you have somebody, let's say in biology or mathematics or any of the hard sciences, where at the undergraduate level there's a lot of memorization, and then they start forward and what does this mean? And they're going, oh no, what does this mean? What does that question mean? What do you mean? All these kinds of things. That's where a discussion with somebody before the test is most helpful. And if that doesn't happen and the test occurs and there's some areas for improvement, then we can discuss what those areas would look like so that there's understanding going forward of what that could be.
My last question is there any recommendations or any suggestions for Saudi Arabian students specifically to improve when they're actually taking courses at university?
Certainly. So usually students that are not from Canada, not just students from Saudi Arabia, but anywhere, usually those students are looking or need to get their heads around two different things, very different things. And number one of those is Canadian culture. It is most amusing to listen to people from Canada question whether there is such a thing as Canadian culture. But we have certain approaches, and those approaches can be quite different. So we've already mentioned that most professors will anticipate and expect and be very comfortable with students talking to them in the first person, hello Charles, as opposed to Professor Scott. But secondly, there is a style, a rhythm in the classroom that we are prepared for. And because when we have offered this educational service to our students, we've committed to provide this. This is part of the package. It is more than just an education in English. It is a cultural encounter. And that is important because most of the courses you will take in a commerce program will explain how a particular aspect works within a global context. There are only 34 million people in Canada at this time. We are 1/2% of the human race. 99.5% of the people walking the earth are not walking it in Canada. So if we're going to sell our products to the world, we have to sort out where the other 99.5% of the human race hangs out. That means we have to understand them. And so it is a fantastic opportunity for students from outside of Canada to understand what it is to learn a different culture. In this case, the culture is Canadian. There are advantages to experiencing that in Canada. We tend to be fairly welcome and opening of people from different backgrounds. I'm an immigrant. I wasn't born in Canada. I was born in Jamaica. We have to learn different ways, and the process of learning very much enriches our education. Second of all, it prepares us for our professional careers, because it may well be, and I think the overwhelming majority of the students that I have met from Saudi Arabia are very proud of where they're from. They're very proud of what's of their country, of the kingdom. So the ability to construct study groups of people from a range of settings is important professional training. And it pulls you into a different way of thinking. Embrace that. Where students do worst is when they are attempting to simply take what they know and make that work here. When in fact, we are different than you're used to. That's one of the reasons you're here, is that we're different than you're used to. So accept that right up front and then make that change. The other piece that I think you will find, this is not particular to Saudi students, but many students will look at how we interact and think, there's something else going on under the surface. As a general rule, no. There's the context is very important. That's one of the learnings. In Canada, much less so. In Canada, there's a tendency to state what you actually think. For people from cultures quite different than Canada, that can be quite disconcerting. And I know that students expect a certain rhythm based on what they've seen. And there are a number of people, and I'm certainly one of them, who will not conform to that. I find that the use of humor, the asking of questions and then waiting until people answer, various tactics that I will use to engage students within the classroom, rather than just sit down and write it all down, that often that will be very uncomfortable for people from outside of Canada. It's a bit uncomfortable for the Canadians. It's particularly uncomfortable for people outside of Canada. But I've been at this now for 13 years. It is the best way I have found to engage people with the material. It produces much richer learning. And I do what I do quite deliberately by design to maximize the ability to learn the material. That means people have to engage with it. And sometimes I'll have to force them to, and that's how it goes. But mostly, I think part of the challenge, and the biggest challenge for students from different cultures, is that they simply stick with what they know and resist picking up new ways of thinking. And it's important to understand that from our point of view, we are very, very clear that we committed to give you new ways of thinking. We committed to that when we invited you here. That was part of our responsibility. We have a responsibility to introduce you to conceptual thinking. And that's, we have to pull our own students, the Canadian-born, Canadian-raised, Canadian-trained students, into new areas in university. That's part of a university's responsibility to all its students, not the ones from other countries, all of them. And that's a bit disconcerting. But we aren't going to change that. That's the deal. You signed up for that, we committed to that, we're obliged to deliver that, we will deliver that.
And it's a good way as well. Thank you very much, Jones.
Okay, take care.
I really appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you for your time. So I think I think I got more than what I